Good evening, and welcome to Sound Heights. I'm actually not in the Sound Heights studio in Brooklyn, down in Florida right now. And I was not sure if I was going to do this class. We've been doing it every week for, this is number 15. So, to the math, but been pretty consistent. It's been really, it's been a nice thing to be connecting our love of music with love of the deep teachings of Torah and Chassidus. And I wasn't sure if I was going to do it this week, but the thing that kind of made me inspired and feel like it was important to keep going, the importance of what we're doing in Sound Heights in general, and in particular, the chat at the bottom of the screen. You can let me know. I might switch to a different connection. So for now, we'll keep it going like this. So we'll keep this one short. So I'm not in the studio, obviously, tonight, but there still will be an open jam tonight hosted by Chaim Shader. So if you show up at 8:47 East New York, at 9:30, that should get going. And he wanted to just remind me that about using common sense in terms of people who aren't feeling well to stay home. But in general, the idea of music is something that's a luxury. And let's say in a time of difficulty, in a time when things are in turmoil, when one's life is chaotic, certainly when the world is in a state of chaos, it almost seems that music becomes an afterthought. It becomes something that, well, I'll have to save that for when times are good and just times of celebration. So obviously music has that role. When we're relieved of troubles, we celebrate, we sing. But there's another dimension of music that we've been learning about, we've been talking about, that applies very specifically to the times within the trouble, before the trouble has been relieved. And it's still a song of celebration. It's a song of a miracle that one will be rescued from the trouble. But it's a confidence. And in this way, music acts as a role to build confidence. We call this class singing in the face of fear, because ultimately, as we've been talking about, has been a major theme. This idea of what we had mentioned that Chezkiah HaMelech, King Hezekiah, he had been, so to speak, punished, or rather withheld from him the opportunity to be the global redeemer, to be Mashiach, because he didn't sing, a song of thanks for the miracles. And we'd look at different commentaries, and it turned out that one of the details, there's a question that one of the commentaries asks. If you go back into our earlier classes, we get into it, that he had actually had sung. There were songs he composed. So if that's the case, then why did the Gemara say, or did the Talmud say that he didn't sing? And that's why he didn't merit to be the Redeemer. And the answer that we were given, and I believe this was from the Shalah HaKodesh, the Shnei Luchos Abris, Rabbi Yitzchak Hurwitz, from about 350 years ago, that he taught us that actually, even though he sang, what he didn't do was sing in preparation for the miracles that were to come. And there's this idea of salvation, and this is something we quoted from the Lubavitcher Rebbe, that salvation comes with a certain bitachon. Bitachon is a certain trust that the salvation will come. And we start the music, we start the singing, we start the songs of thanks for the miracles before we even see the miracles, because we're confident that we see the miracles. So where does this confidence come from? So confidence in a time of great strife in one's personal life, in a global way. I mean, we've been talking about this major theme of personal redemption leading to global redemption. And we can see the parallel in today's troubled times. the news and the panics and everything like that, that we see that in many ways it's seems like somewhat surreal, if it's because it seems like something creeping around the corner, like some kind of science fiction dystopia scenario, with this idea that we see a global turmoil leads to individual turmoil, certainly, and global redemption is going to lead to individual redemption in that same way. And the opposite is also true, that global redemption, global resolution, relief from turmoil, relief from panic and fear will come from the contributions. So this is in the hands of each one of us, as challenging as things may be. Certainly, if we're dealing with clear and present danger, that's a certain level of challenge, a person to be calm in the face of danger. But certainly when we're dealing with a lurking danger, a danger of the unknown, panic in the streets, kind of thing, that it's essential that we connect deeply to a place of confidence and a place of faith, of emunah. And this is something that uh, certain rabbis have been talking about. Dubinsky talks about comparing what's happening, the trouble in the world, to like the turbulence on an airplane. And usually, most likely, no matter how irreligious or non-believing that a person is, when they get into a situation when they're so vulnerable on an airplane, however many thousand feet in the air, and it and you get turbulence, it seems like the plane could fall apart and fall out of the sky at any moment. So will enter a state of some kind of prayer, and exactly who they're praying to is based on what they've thought about before. But and there are, of course, the stubborn people who will not admit that they're praying, that they envision other things, and it's very possible that even when a person is in a state of turbulence, they don't turn to prayer. But ultimately, as Rabbi Dubinsky says, if they're not praying, it's probably because the turbulence is not so intense. So ultimately, if a person senses that there is a turbulence in their life, in the world, that the reaction, as it would be in a plane of turbulence, is to pray. And so, as we've been learning, so there could be a prayer of desperation, a prayer of extreme vulnerability and meekness and smallness, which is a part of a prayer, and a very important part of prayer, this humility. But there's another part of prayer that we've been emphasizing in Chassidus and music, which is the confidence and joy. This is the part of prayer that is best expressed by music. And as we have been talking about, that prayer without music is lacking vitality. It's lacking a lasting inspiration. So if you picture that analogy of a person in an airplane and experiencing turbulence, and that they're going to start to pray, and most people would pray in a desperate way. You can imagine, this is, in a scared way, in a fearful way. So we can deepen our experience with music, we deepen our experience with prayer itself by connecting to that kind of confidence, that kind of experience, in a way of singing, in a way of joy. And it almost seems like a contradiction. I mean, if my life is in danger and I'm turning to prayer, well, it's most naturally returning to prayer of desperation. So where does this confident singing come in? Well, the truth is, most likely, if somebody is not used to praying, most likely, if they're in a dangerous, a life or death situation, their prayer most likely will be pretty desperate. But if a person has been training themselves, a person is of that mind, that they understand that prayer is a deep connection to the divine, and it's beyond any limitation. And there's a confidence that we're being held in the hands of the Creator, that there's a plan to all this, that ultimately there's not a random set of events, or some kind of nihilistic, cruel God that seeks to see us suffer. On the contrary, that there's a kindness, that ultimately, that everything is happening in the world is for the sake of the good of us here, good of human beings, the good of the world. And that when we have that faith and that trust, and on our prayers we've been working on our prayers and our music. So our music is in a way of prayer, and our prayer is in the way of music. And it's a way of confidence and joy that when we're confronted with something it seems dangerous, it seems life or death, or maybe that is clearly life or death, then we're gonna not be fearful. We're gonna be joyful. And it seems almost crazy. But if a person who's been praying that way and has been cultivating that and has been playing music that way, and that this makes music in a much stronger way. Music is not something that is limited or lead to, let's say, self-expression even, or showing off skills. Music is something that is in a deep connection to one's divine self. And if that's how one is connecting to music, and that's how one is playing music, that is prayer. And there's really not such a, there could be traditional prayer in a certain traditional prayer setting, and there can be music in various settings, or in a, even an entertainment setting, but that can be connected to a deep divine place. So to connect it to some of the teaching that we've been learning, I'll refer you to the sources. If you go to soundheitsrecords.com, the events section or the Chassidus and music section, the sources of classes 13 or 14. If you go to the PDF there, you can download the PDF. There's one source, a couple of things here we hadn't read yet. We had read from the Tzemach Tzedek the idea of the nature of music in Shabbos. So you talked about the idea that when Shabbos comes and there's a prohibition of playing instruments on Shabbos, and Shabbos represents a certain kind of silence, elevation above the noise, elevation above the boundaries and the limitations of words and thoughts. And that's the essence of music. The essence of music is actually a certain kind of silence. And that ultimately that we can bring that back down into the world of limitation. And so, as we mentioned in recent weeks, that sometimes taking a break from your instrument, for example, experiencing life and experiencing silence between music, even within musical piece, the silent moments, it enables everything to be experienced in a much deeper way. And so we can see that also in our lives, that with circumstances come, a person takes a break from the instrument. But certainly, let's say if we're in a state of mass, God forbid, it shouldn't be like this, but it obviously in the current state that there is, people are sensing this kind of mass panic, or certainly a trepidation and unknown. And it seems like kind of an inappropriate time to be blissfully and kind of celebrating. Certainly, to kind of ignore the fear is something that seems callous and unfeeling. And on the other hand, there are those who would, let's say, experience music in another way of kind of trying to shut off the static and go into a way of unbridled hedonism or something like that. But either way, whether a person is kind of in a state is in a state of denial. We're not talking about being in a state of denial. We're talking about being fully aware of feelings, of one's own feelings, of others' feelings, but nevertheless being able to express music that is illuminating that from inside. So first, there's this idea of Shabbos, of taking a break, because ultimately there's things to do, there's things to take care of that are not playing music, and there's music that's quiet. There's a musical feeling, there's a vitality, a certain way of an energy that's also music, and that's represented by Shabbos. We talked about that, and that is from the place of Kesser, of the essence of Hashem, the essence of God, that's beyond all limitation. And so we bring that down through this idea, through music itself. So here in this source, again, you go to soundheitsrecords.com, you find the source from either in the events section from tonight's class, or if it's the last 2 weeks, class 14 and 13. And we go to the right-hand column, right in the middle. It says Ha'ara 6. It's a short piece from the Alter Rebbe. So this is Torah Or. which again is something we've been learning a lot from, is one of the primary sources of Chassidus and music. And the Alter Rebbe here kind of encapsulates this idea of Shabbos and the idea of transformation through music. So it says like this in Torah or Sisa Karshus Ki Sisa and the Hisafos and the additional discourses on page 113 in the first column. So it says like this: Shabbos hu aliyos ha'olamos. Shabbos is the elevation of the worlds. Lamaila, the worlds are becoming elevated. They're rising. Shema shenivar b'chol olu l'mayla mayla kulu. That which has become refined in the weekday, being elevated on Shabbos. And so when we're talking about Shabbos, we're also talking about the redemption. And the redemption, everything that's been happening throughout history, which we refer to as gullus, as exile, will become elevated in the times of redemption, which is what we're experiencing now. That everything that we're experiencing was become elevated. And as the Rebbe says very, very clearly, there's those who object, who, the famous joke that a simple Jew and his wife in Russia, they were experiencing, they were taught by the Rebbe about redemption, about Mashiach coming. Mashiach coming. And you have to pack your bags and get ready for Mashiach. And then the husband comes home and tells his wife all about what the Rebbe said. And he said, the Rebbe said that Mashiach is coming, and that we're gonna leave and go to Eretz Yisrael. And she said, well, we have to leave. We have to go. We have to go to the land of Israel. But what about our home here? We have our animals and we have our belongings. And all the people we know are here, and everything, our whole life is here. We have to uproot and go to the land of Israel. So he said, he thought for a moment, and he said, my dear wife, listen, there's the God in the world, and he saved us from the pogroms. He saved us from all the troubles that have been facing the Jewish people for many years. He saved us from Pharaoh, from the Pharaoh in Egypt, and throughout the Jewish history, God has saved us. He'll save us from Mashiach too. So this idea that the Rebbe addresses, this idea that there's a fear in the coming redemption, that everything is going to be uprooted. Everything will be in a state of turmoil. Well, we're taught, the prophets teach us that the redemption will be in a way lo b'chipazon. It won't be with rushing. It won't be with stress. It'll be relaxed. That we'll be able to leave, and ultimately the idea, we will not be leaving our possessions. We will not be uprooted from the things that we've gained, whether it's material possessions, but certainly even spiritual connections, friendships, relationships, other things. It's not the end of exile. The beginning of redemption is not about losing. It's not about being uprooted. He talks about this idea that the Hebrew word for exile is gola, gimel vav, lamed hey, and redemption is geula, which is the same word with an aleph stuck in the middle. Aleph representing a revelation of a godly reality. That the transformation from exile to redemption is not an uprooting of anything. It's actually an elevation of everything. Everything becomes revealed as being a representative and expressing the godly reality. And that's essentially what we're experiencing now, this elevation. And it can seem tumultuous and it can be scary, but ultimately we are in God's hands. And we express this through our learning of Torah, our deeds and our mitzvahs, and particularly looking out for others. And we express that through our prayer, and our music is what we're talking about. So that's why, to continue in the source, the Alter Rebbe continues, therefore it's a mitzvah to sing on Shabbos. So we had spoken about last week from the Tzemach Tzedek, last 2 weeks, from the third Lubavitcher Rebbe, saying that the norm on Shabbos is silence. And the rabbis were very hard pressed to even allow people to speak on Shabbos. Shabbos is so holy. But nevertheless, the idea of singing on Shabbos is a very special mitzvah, because we're revealing that silence in song. As the holy Arizal, the a Kabbalist from 15th century or 16th century Tzvat, in the land of Israel, one of the primary Kabbalists. He said, "Shehu b'chinas kalos nefesh," that singing on Shabbos is the expiration of the soul. It is the yearning of the soul to cleave to its source. It's this idea of silence, this idea of going beyond all limitations. V'gam b'meis hamikdash haya b'Shabbos hashir kapu, and also in the Holy Temple in Jerusalem and Shabbos, the shir was doubled. So doubled can be looked at in a couple of ways. The Alter Rebbe gives one interpretation. What does it mean that the song was doubled in the Holy Temple? Nir d'rat solemer shahaya shir b'musaf gamkin. So one interpretation is that there was in the morning prayer and one in the Ek Shabbos, which what we pray out of a prayer book on Shabbos. There's this extra prayer, but in the Holy Temple, it was actually an extra sacrifice, an offering, which was accompanied by additional music. Another way of seeing this doubled song is that in the temple, the song is doubled because it's not just singing like we are allowed to on Shabbos, but it's instruments which outside the temple we're not allowed to. So he continues, V'zehu sha'amar zal, yotzin b'shir, v'nimshachim b'shir. As we've spoken about this Mishnah that the Alter Rebbe that's teaching us this, he brought the mystical interpretation of this seemingly simple description of Jewish law, a prohibition on Shabbos, that those who wear a collar are able to carry the collar in and out on Shabbos. So the word collar, sher, is also the word shir, which is song. So yotzim b'shir, v'nimshachim b'shir. So everything from the spiritual energies, from the angels to the souls, to everything that grows or changes in this world, it goes out with a song and it enters with a song. Pirush. This means to say, yotzim b'kalas nafsham ad madrega sheichel liyelich ba'atzmam, that they leave the soul leaves the level that they were they become a level they're able to go beyond that limitation of that level. V'nimshachim b'shir, and they enter with a song. They're able to reach to the next level, a higher level. So it's leaving and entering, leaving the previous level and entering a new level. They're not able to do it on their own, meaning without music. This growth is not able to happen without music. That this they bring down this energy from above in order to be able to pull them up. So this song, as we spoke about last week, is from this very high level of Kesser. It's beyond limitation. And so by singing, whether singing in this world or we're talking about singing in spiritual realms or wherever it is, singing connects us to the higher, the most high, in a way, the level beyond limitation, and is able to pull us out of our current limitation into a new place. And so that's why the transition, the transformation from exile to redemption will happen through music, is happening through music. And the let's say the distressed, fearful panic, which seems to be the opposite of music, which is the opposite of music, is counteracted by our engagement in prayer and music, by our nurturing of faith, believing that miracles are upon us, and acting on it, increasing in goodness and kindness, increasing in Torah study, increasing in prayer and music. So this is what Soundheights is about. This is essentially, as we're learning from Chassidus, because Chassidus is the essence of Torah. It's not just unique to us musicians. This is something that is important for anyone to appreciate, that the Torah is coming to teach us. Torah is a way of life. And I heard recently a rabbi was making a point, which is an important point from Chassidus, but it's frankly a point of an older time. He said he was he heard somebody talk about inspiration. He wanted to make it clear that inspiration was not that important. The most important thing is to do the mitzvah. The most important thing is the good deed. Inspiration is not so important. We can get caught up in inspiration. Use an example of a fire, that inspiration is like fire. So fire could burn straw and it fizzles out very quickly. Or fire could burn, takes longer to burn. It's not as flaming at first, but then it catches on a log and it lasts longer. So of course there's that idea that um, good deed without inspiration is still good deed, and that is the foundation of our service in this world. It's the foundation of our spiritual that are expressing uh, our service, our divine service. But the idea, what the time in which our good deeds were enough, and it was enough just to be disciplined and to do mitzvahs and to learn with a sense of bitterness and duty, without joy and inspiration. That's the thing of exile, and we're entering the time of redemption. So yes, it goes without saying that we need good deeds. We need increase in many deeds and much learning of Torah. But it's essential that it's infused with music. It's infused with vitality and joy. And this is exactly the thing that's needed to counteract our own fear and the fear that may surround us. And we have the prophecy that the exile is not going to come contrary to some belief with some Armageddon and some panic-ridden turmoil and destruction of the world. The redemption will come. The exile will end, and the redemption will come with ni'imos, with pleasantness and kindness, and we can bank on that. We can trust that. That is a guarantee from Hashem through the prophets. And so everyone should be blessed. We also wanted to say in Sound Heights, we're going to put this out there, hopefully, God willing, and who knows what's going to happen, but planning on coming back to New York next week. And I'd like to start planning some events, live music events, because I know people are afraid to go out to live music and to go into gatherings. So if we could do small musical performances at Sound Heights, if anybody would, and then live stream them, hopefully be better quality than this live stream tonight. We'll get that together. I'm here at a remote location, but invite anybody who has music they want to share and would normally, let's say, have a gig or come to Sound Heights. We're all set up with all the equipment and the sound equipment, everything, and we'd love to get that, make that available. So if people aren't going out to live shows, there can still be a plethora of live music. We can make that contribution. So of course you can always make a contribution to Sound Heights. Go to soundheightsrecords.com and stay safe, stay positive, and keep playing. Remember, with abundant singing and playing of music, we bring about the true and complete redemption. Thank you. Good night.